Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the International Collaborations Future Prospects, organized by the International Relations Office, University of Peradeniya, and the National Science Foundation. I'm Roshan Reddy from the International Relations Office, and I'm happy to be your host in today's program. This is an experience sharing session on ways of continuing international collaborative research after COVID-19 with experts in conducting international collaborative research, both in Sri Lanka and beyond. So first, before I start this program, I would like to ask all our attendees to switch on their mic, switch off their mic, and then if you have any questions, please be kind enough to post them in the chat section because there will be a Q&A session after the program. We will be attending to all these questions. So without much ado, first I invite Professor Shameen Jinadasa, the Director of the International Relations Office, University of Peradeniya, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Roshan. Good afternoon to you all. On behalf of International Relations Office, University of Peradeniya and National Science Foundation, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the webinar on International Collaborations Future Prospects. For today's program, we are honored to have well-renowned researchers who conduct the international collaborative research. Prof. Ranjith Senaratne, Chairman of National Science Foundation, Prof. Saman Halgamuge from University of Melbourne, Prof. Janaka Ekanayake from Faculty of Engineering, Peradeniya, Prof. Jaya Seneviratne, National Dental Research Institute, Singapore, Prof. Stephen Schensul from University of Connecticut, Ms. Krishanti Meeghapola, later she will be joining Director Overseas Education, Ministry of Education, the Additional Secretary, Mr. Tilak Kettiarachchi, Development, Ministry of Education. Also, we are very much happy to have Dr. Nanda Gunawardena, Director Research and International Relations, who will be moderating the discussion. We warmly welcome all the participants for the program with us today and hope you will get the maximum benefit of the program. This session is targeted for the all academic staff and research staff of the universities and other institutions to discuss about new ways continuing the international collaborative research after COVID-19. So that who are having the experience will be sharing that with who are younger and other people to come up with new research projects and collaborative ways to go even on the work. So the COVID-19 has had some transformation in sectors like the higher education and other areas. So the conducting research has become sometimes challenging, but the collaborative research with these recent technologies and other with all the opportunities we have, still we should continue. So I ensure the webinar will be profitable and next few hours will be enjoyable and fruitful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I now take the opportunity to invite Professor Ranjith Senaratne, the Chairman of the National Science Foundation, to deliver the opening remarks of today's program.
Good morning, our colleagues from USA. Good afternoon, our Sri Lankan friends and colleagues, and good evening, those who are joining from Australia and Singapore. It affords me great pleasure to be associated with this important event organized by University of Peradeniya, that is the International Relations Office, jointly with National Science Foundation. Needless to add that this is a topic of great importance in the present context with the advent of COVID. We know COVID pandemic affected all nations in the world, whether it's a superpower or small country, big country, or it's a technological giant, all have been affected. So as one family, global family, we need to learn from each other's experience. From success stories, from failures, we have to share our knowledge and experience, so for which international cooperation provides a bridge. So I think this COVID has afforded a new dimension, new direction and momentum to international cooperation. So University of Peradeniya has really identified a very topical subject for the webinar. And we see this international cooperation, now NSF also has accorded high priority to this, and we are presently in the process of constructing a digital platform to harness our expatriates for national development. So we have been really now developing a database. So we have already over 600, and Professor Saman from Australia, we had a webinar, and we had one also with America, we are going to have with UK. So though it is mainly for expatriates, that will also afford an opportunity for us to link with other scientists who like to work with Sri Lanka in a mutually rewarding and reinforcing manner. So National Science Foundation will really foster and promote international cooperation, that the universities, also R&D institutions interested in building cooperation with research institutions, universities overseas, and this is one of our top priorities with the advent of COVID. We know there are financial constraints, serious financial constraints. All countries are having that problem, but for international cooperation, work on a digital platform, use these technological advances of ICT, it is not going to cost us much. It's going to, so I think we can still really work together without really entailing much additional expenditure. And in regard to Sri Lanka, I think it's a country, of very rich diversity, hotspot of diversity, that's ecological diversity. And also we have been, actually because of the history, we have over 200 shipwrecks. So in the marine archaeology. So Sri Lanka could offer many opportunities to foreign countries to work in a mutually rewarding and reinforcing manner on virgin areas, and also our ocean, Indian Ocean. We know Pacific and Atlantic fairly well studied, but Indian Ocean studied very little. So it is again a really fertile area for studies. I think this University of Peradeniya with this initiative would be able to enhance its international cooperation, to strengthen its capabilities, and also affording more opportunities to expose Sri Lankan students and scientists to the world. And NSF will be happy to really lend a helping hand in this direction to make their endeavors success. So wishing this event a great success, I will conclude my few words, but my staff, this head international cooperation division, will join you. Since I have to attend a board meeting, I will leave early. So I wish the this conference success, and again many thanks to Professor Shameen and my close friend Dr. Nanda for organizing this event and for inviting us to be a part of it. All the best. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you a lot, Professor Ranjith, for your good thoughts. Next, I take the opportunity to invite our first speaker for today, Professor Saman Halgamuge from the University of Melbourne, Australia. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So good afternoon to you in Sri Lanka, and I'm speaking from Melbourne, and it's evening here, and we are also in lockdown, so we are at home. So I will try to share the screen and hope it will work. And please tell me if you can see my slide. Can you see my slide?
Yeah, we can see it. Yes.
Okay, great. So I probably, okay. All right, so I was asked to share some of my experience about joint PhD programs, because in my role as Associate Dean International previously, I have helped creating some of the joint PhD programs for University of Melbourne in Australia. And but I have also offered to talk a little bit about the published research and what do we see from the published research about the international collaboration of Sri Lanka. So I picked a database, and you could pick other databases if you want. So I have looked at Web of Science and Collection. So it's a well-known database which have index journals and index conference papers. So, and I have picked about 12 years, last 12 years, 2009 to 2020. So again, it's arbitrary. So you can do this search, and you can find this data pretty quickly. So this is just an example. And again, many conferences are happening in Sri Lanka if they are not indexed, and they are not recorded here. So over these 11 years plus 9 months, Sri Lanka published about 16,619 papers, and they are index papers, journal, as well as conference papers. So this shows how we publish from 2009. So you can see here, interestingly, there's a small drop from 2009 to 2010. So obviously, this is not a significant drop. So it's a small drop. So you can't actually go back and search for the causes if it's only a small loss. And interestingly, there is also a loss from 2018 to 2019. So that appears a little bit bigger than the loss in 2010. So you might go back and see why there is the number of publications went down in 2019. So there's lots of analysis you can do, and you can look at every single publication in this bar chart. So now I am going to my next slide. So now I have looked at this roughly around last 12 years. What are the publications and what are the areas we publish? I have to say again here that I'm only focusing on STEM area. So science, technology, engineering, medicine. And that is the database is actually reporting on those publications. So I do not have the publication in humanities, law, etc. So it's just a small window to science and engineering, computer science, medicine kind of publications. So you can see that engineering as a block stands out, and then computer science, and then environmental science and ecology. Now this is, if you look at it, so what you see here in this, the blocks here are the top 25 research areas that we publish. And so this is not quite fair. So if you look at medicine, medicine is divided into multiple areas. So we do have quite a lot of publications in medicine. So infectious diseases. So I don't know, tropical medicine. So medicine is divided into multiple areas, and engineering is also divided into some areas. For example, you can find some telecommunication here. I think it's a part of engineering. So it's not quite reflective of what we are publishing, but it gives you an idea, at least, that engineering, computer science, and environmental science and ecology are significant areas that we publish as a country. If you look at the last 12 years, and the next slide I'm showing is probably more interesting to the topic we are discussing today. And what are the 25 regions, collaborating regions or countries, pretty much, Sri Lanka collaborates with? So it's very clear, and our traditional countries of collaboration, it's US, UK, or England, as they call it, but I believe it's a broader United Kingdom, and then Australia, so, and quite close. And this is, again, these blocks are the top 25 regions that we are collaborating in this 16,649 index papers. So now you would ask me, how do you get these countries? And of course, the data, every paper has the author's affiliation. So it extracts this information from author's affiliation and populate this diagram. So you can also see that India is in the 4th place, and then China, as we would expect, in the 5th place, and not too far away from each other, and they both have quite similar numbers. And Germany is also a relatively strong collaborative country. So now, if you look at it, and there are some exotic countries here as well, Colombia. So Sri Lanka is collaborating with Colombia. And now, if you actually dive down to the details, if you find out what are these papers that we are collaborating on, and you will see that many of these papers are large-scale collaborations. Okay, so for example, a study on water, and there are about 50 countries involved, 50 institutions around the world, and one Sri Lankan institution is involved. So therefore, it's listed here as a collaborative paper. So you can see that, but clearly you can see that with my next slide, and more about our international collaboration. So these are the research funding agencies acknowledged in these 16,619 papers, and not all of them acknowledge funding agencies. Some papers are not funded by a particular agency. So, but these are the 25 top funders of Sri Lankan research in the last 12 years in the STEM area, only index papers. So about 1,000, the majority are National Science Foundation, but actual number is bigger than this. The reason is because this is an automatic tool. So it's possible if you write the National Science Foundation with some mistake, if you say National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka or something like that, then maybe it is reported as a different organization. But this National Science Foundation is our National Science Foundation, not the one in the United States. So it's interesting that a lot of our work, our publications are supported by National Science Foundations. And then the second space that is a surprise. It is an organization from China. So I do not personally know them. NSFC, that's the C stands for China. And the third place is European Union. And then you have FNRS, that's well-known organization. And familiar names are here. So an Indian organization, funding agency here, Department of Science and Technology, Ireland. So this also gives an indication of and how our papers are funded. So, I mean, if you do a serious study, you can actually look at these things and figure out what is the profile of our papers and our index research. And this is top 25 institutions, again, for the same 12-year or 11-year plus 9 months period. And of course, not a surprise that we see the University of Peradeniya publishes quite a bit. And so it's the #1 place, and then University of Colombo, and then the Moratuwa and Ruhuna, Kalani, all our universities are here. And the interesting thing to look at is who else is here. So after Sri Lankan universities and University of California system, so about 890 papers in the last 12 years of Sri Lankans collaborated with University of California system. So all universities in that system. So, and then we have Imperial College, London is quite a strong collaborator here, and with Sri Lanka, Chinese Academy of Sciences, not a huge surprise in there. And then Johns Hopkins, not a surprise. University of Auckland and State University System, Florida, and so on and so on. So you can see this is again for the Sri Lanka for the last 12 years. So then I looked at the record briefly for the last 6 years. So it's a closer period, 2014 to 2020. So I'm not going through all of that, but the general message is it hasn't changed that much. So this 6 year and 9 months period is this square here, and it's not a huge difference. So I just put the top 25 institutions Sri Lanka collaborate with, and after our Sri Lankan universities. And again, you see the University of California system, Imperial College London, and so on. So the usual universities that we have seen in the previous previous diagram. So there are some changes, but by and large, we have a similar system. And you could see also the majority of the publications the last 12 years actually did happen in the last 6 years and 9 months. So out of the 16,000, 12,640 happened in the last couple of years. Since one of our host organizations today is University of Peradeniya, or the host organization is University of Peradeniya, I looked at University of Peradeniya publication for the last 12 years. Now, I have to say that you could analyze this a little bit more on different directions. And so you have seen that in recent ranking, University of Colombo became #2 and University of Peradeniya #1. So now you have to understand that University of Colombo does not really have an engineering faculty. So the publications in engineering still come from the physics. I know people publish in the discipline of engineering from physics in Colombo University, but it is a major hole in terms of publications for University of Colombo. So Peradeniya is pretty much the major comprehensive, fully comprehensive university we have. So now if you look at Peradeniya University, and so who are the collaborating regions? Of course, the biggest block is Sri Lanka, so you have to ignore that because all 3,237 publications have Sri Lankan authors. That's given. But the most collaborating country for Peradeniya University is Australia. So it's a slightly different order. It's not the United States. The United States is the close second. And then the third is not England, so Japan, and then England, and then China, then Canada, India, and so on. It's a slightly different order for University of Peradeniya. Okay. So now you can go on and see the funding organizations that funded these 3,237 index papers in Peradeniya University. And again, it's not a surprise. It's again, you can see the National Science Foundation, and then you can see here different organizations: National Research Council Sri Lanka, and National Health and Medical Research Council of Australia, that's NHMRC as we call it. It's our major funding body for medical research. So you can see the medicine playing a huge role here in Peradeniya University funding as well. So, and these are again the top 25 funders of University of Peradeniya Research. So I told you that National Science Foundation may come up as different names. So here is another example. So here, National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka, National Science Foundation, NSF, they both are actually the National Science Foundation of Sri Lanka in here, as far as I can understand. So now these are the formal slides that I have here. And to talk about the published research, I put this one here to show that we already have a reasonably vibrant culture of collaboration. But if you actually look into the details of it, and they are not happening because of joint PhDs. So now I connect my experience with joint PhDs into this discussion, and Sri Lanka could have a significant number of joint PhD programs. They do exist, and I know that there's a vibrant program between UGC and QUT in Australia. And so there are already PhD graduates. And if you closely look at the publication analysis, you can see that collaborative publications between Australia and Sri Lanka has increased because of these joint PhD programs. So now joint PhD programs can be of twofold, and one could be a PhD offered by two institutions. So I take University of Peradeniya as an example. So PhD offered by University of Peradeniya and Queensland University of Technology. So two institutions, one PhD. So students write one thesis that will be examined by people from both universities. And they are, of course, they are supervised together as well. So typically a student spend a couple of years at Peradeniya University and a couple of years at KUT. So now the other form is that student get a PhD from University of Peradeniya, but supervised by 2 institutions. So you have a University of Peradeniya supervisor and you have a KUT supervisor. So both programs do exist. So, and of course the institutions prefer to offer a jointly awarded PhD, and because then you have the credit for that graduate in both universities, but sometimes the students prefer to get jointly supervised PhD from a better university of the 2, okay? So there is something that you need to look at about the demand for joint PhD programs. So my experience with joint PhD programs are with IITs in India. And so it was quite successful. It is for University of Melbourne. So, but initially we realized that most of the students coming to this program are not the top tier students from IITs. Top tier students from IITs want to go to top university. They want to come to us and do a PhD with us. They don't want to work with IIT, right? So there was a bit of a struggle to get some of the really top IIT students to go into that program, but some of them did, okay, due to some personal reasons. So I had a student who decided to do the joint PhD because he wanted to get married, or he wanted to spend a few years in India before coming to Australia. So that suited him, but it's not the majority. So one major challenge of joint PhD programs is to get quality student, really, I mean, you get quality students, but the proportion to have really high quality students. So, but jointly supervised programs are much easier because the student get a PhD from UC Berkeley and you have a supervisor in University of Peradeniya. That's not a problem for student, right? So it's all about the attitudes and demand and playing that and being realistic about it. And so now we have a vibrant program. Yes, University of Melbourne has a vibrant program with 3 or 4 major IITs in India, and we get really good students. And we are beginning to get the top tier students because some of them do not want to spend the entire time overseas. And they also understand that with electronic means, you can work very nicely. So I'm not going to talk anymore. So I'm happy to answer any questions when we have the Q&A round. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now so that you can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Professor Saman. That was a very informative presentation and a good number of statistics as well. So with that, our next resource person for today is Professor Janaka Ekanayake, representing the University of Peradeniya from Faculty of Engineering. So let's hear what Professor Janaka has to say. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon to some of you who is let me first share my screen. I hope that you can see my screen now. So the topic that I'm going to discuss is opportunities for Sri Lankan researchers to initiate new international collaborations and way forward. So I'm attached to the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering of University of Peradeniya. Basically, I'm sure most of you are tapping these funding agencies I have listed in this slide. The Erasmus Plus is, I mean, a lot of people got grants from Erasmus Plus, National Institute of Health Research, IDRC, Global Challenge Research Fund, and Horizon 2020, and I'm sure you can list more. Now, so we are into international, we are tapping the international opportunities, But if you really look at the amount of international opportunities we have in, for Sri Lankans to get involved, you may see that there are more. Now, the type of the grants that one can apply could be more fundamental type research, or could be, the kind of commercialization kind of research, or it could be more into, the equipment, infrastructure development, or could be training people. So I'm sure you have come across different grants. Now, what I did, as Professor Halgamuge did, I tapped a different database, which is called Research Professional. I don't believe that University of Peradeniya is subscribing to this particular Research Professional. You can go there as a guest, but I think we need to explore how we could get the full access of these kind of. Now, what I did, I put Sri Lanka as the nationality of researcher, and when you search, you will find that there are 3,817 items for the research funding openings, opportunities that one can apply. That like I tried this a couple of days ago. Now, for example, there was one which says, it's all about the COVID-19 and community engaged research. Now, if you look at their eligibility profile, you can see that the country of applicant, institute, it could be any in the world. Nationality of researcher could be any. Type of institution could be any. Now, in some, you cannot apply, but you can be a participant. Another example is here. So, likewise, if you use any of these the databases, you should be able to find a research goal somewhere in the world that suits you. But that's not the important thing. You can find the goal, but how you approach, how you apply for that goal, that is the most important thing. So in the next few slides, I will dedicate to the process or the important points that one should consider when one applies for a research grant. Now, there are two approaches, of course. One is, we call it a shotgun approach. You just keep on firing bullets. One day you hit a target. You don't know whether, you are not looking at anything specially. Now, these are really good for fast-moving targets, like, all these COVID research opportunities came recently. You don't have even time to think, because there are, once you finish one, there's another one coming. So you can keep on trying, but the chances are very low. But you will get a good practice for getting ready, or getting like putting things together for a research grant application. More the planned approach is the SNIPA approach, where you precisely target for a particular research grant, and then you put together everything very carefully and then apply for the grant. Now, this is the better approach generally. There is a high chance that your application will be fully developed, but that doesn't mean that you will get funding. For example, I tried a Erasmus grant last year, which was like a shotgun approach. I found it quickly and I put together a group, and we fired and we failed. I couldn't submit end of the day because I was, I couldn't put everything together. Then, because I had a good plan, I was waiting for the same organization to call for grant application for the same grant. And this time I was well planned and reapplied, or kind of applied. First time I couldn't apply, but I failed. So you put a lot of time, but you don't always get it. So, but that's not the disappointment, because you have tried, and you can always improve it and resubmit. But if you never fire short, you will never hit a target. So you need to make sure that you try few of these grants, whatever the best way you can. But when you are applying for these kind of international grants, one important thing is project partners. If you don't get the correct project partner, the chances are very low. Now important thing is when you selecting the project partners, their inclusion need to be focused on the benefits of the projects. Now you need to find for every partner that you select a distinct role and a responsibility. And its complementary areas are good, but overlaps may, the funders may think that you are just trying to waste funding. Just think about getting a band together. You will not have two drummers on a band. So make sure that you have the right composition when you select the project partners. The second one is the track record. Now, I'm just showing you some of the things that you can look for when you are selecting the partners. If you are looking for a PhD student, sorry, to partnering with you for a particular research grant, then you need to look at the topic of the PhD, the journal or conference papers, public outreach, and any training or so. But if you are looking for a professor, you are in the other end, you need to look at star publication, how many principal investigators he was in grants, was he in a strategic advisory panel, were there inter-university interactions, and so on. So make sure that you also find people not only based on the niche or a particular need, but also based on their track record. So this is the things that you need to do. Identify a suitable partner. You have preliminary discussions with him, and you need to define the roles and responsibilities and expectations from that particular partner. This is very important. If you don't exactly define the responsibilities, what each partner is doing, the funders may look at it as a very loose application. So each partner, as I said, need to have a clear niche, distinct role, and unique perspective, and add value to the overall project. Once you define roles and all that, you need to agree the management structure. Remember, the project management is very important when you are doing a project where part of the partners are not in the same country or same university. So you always need to very carefully define who is the project leader. If your project has different work packages, who are the work package leaders? The different work package will need, I'm sorry about, there's a noise outside, which let me stop for a minute until, okay. So each work package should have its own leader. Then we can have task leaders to look after different tasks in the project. But that kind of, you need to assign the project management roles to every single person in that group. Otherwise, the funders may look it as a very loose project. Now, this is a project that, in fact, we applied last night. You can see that this particular project has 5 work packages. The work package 1, which is not shown here, is the project management. Work package 3 and 4, you can see that the Peradeniya is there, where we are developing a prototype together with Uniten, Malaysian University, and Cardiff University in the UK, and 2 companies. So we have very clearly identified who will do what. And you also can see the way we have shown these logos. Now, the Peradeniya has the biggest logo because we are going to lead the project. So when the funder see this kind of a diagram, he can get the direct idea of about the the thinking that has gone into this project proposal. Now we will be supported by Uniten, and there are 3 outsiders. They will help us, but not do the main job. Similarly, we have a social work package supported. The key group is the IPS, which is the Institute of Policy Studies, and we have business innovation work package, where you can, as you can see, there are no universities in the business work package. There are very few involvements of business partners in the key engineering work packages. So you need to kind of show this distinction. It's very important that we plan the project very carefully before we apply. And when you write about the team, this is also a very important thing one has to remember. Now, I know that most of us are writing about the team like this. The team formed here are world leading, internationally respected, and have an extensive track record. The team has worked together previously and now looks to expand to take on a broader challenge. We have published extensively, including top quality journals. The team is exceptionally well positioned to address challenges in this area. So you can see that this, this has all the positive words in it. But look at the second one. The team formed here consists of an artificial intelligence specialist, 2 sociologists. One has previously involved in collecting data using mobile phones, a virologist, and an epistemologist. The team have worked together previously on a project funded by DFCC. Even though the project funding was small, the team published 2 journal papers and 2 conference papers. Collectively, we have 200 papers, and all the members are having H index of 10 or above. So you can see that the one in the green and one in the blue. One is you just tell. Other one, you give evidence to substantiate your claims. So it's very important that we provide as much evidence as possible rather than trying to tell things in the best possible words one can think of. So the second one is very important. So I think I'm just on time. So let me conclude. So in summary, collaborative and multidisciplinary research opportunities are increasing. If you look around, you will find there are so many. One of the determining factors for success is the team that you put together. I mean, all I'm trying to say is you will have the best research methodology written, because that is your expertise. You will, write the other things, but you may think that team is not something that you need to focus on. But remember, the best research problems and the methodology that you will add, how you will address, will not win a research grant. In order to win a research grant, you need to have the best team, and you need to demonstrate that this team can do what is proposed. And as I keep on telling, when selecting a team member, each member for the team, they should have niche, a distinct role and responsibility. Thank you very much for spending your time. And I would like to acknowledge Cardiff University. They have grant writing toolkits, I think the biggest toolkits I have ever seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Janaka, for your thoughts. And it was a very good presentation and sharing your thoughts on the do's and don'ts in a collaborative project. So with that, our third speaker for today is Professor Jaya Seneviratne, and is the principal investigator of the National Dental Research Institute Singapore and Duke NUS Medical School. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Prashant. Good afternoon, everybody. And first, I would like to thank Professor Shameen and the International Office of University of Peradeniya and NSF for this kind invitation. Okay, let me share the slide first. Okay. Okay, is it clear now? Are you able to see the slides?
No, sir, no, not yet.
Okay. I believe now
Yes.
you are able to see, right? Okay,
Yes.
right, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so it's a great opportunity for us to, initiate some collaboration with Sri Lanka. So today I sort of chose an interesting topic, COVID-19, never let a good crisis go to waste. In fact, this is not my quote. It's famously, mentioned by the Winston Churchill, and there are debates for this quote as well. I mean, during the World War II. So I believe that the COVID-19 is a litmus test for the world. Whether it's a rich country, developing country, technically savvy country, whatever, everybody faces the same problem. So therefore, if you work hard, work smart, work with passion, I believe you have an advantage to overcome this problem and also find new solutions. Right? So I think Sri Lanka is at crossroad, and Sri Lanka has great opportunity so to take these crisis and turn this into something very useful and very beneficial for Sri Lankan academics and as well as Sri Lanka. So I'm going to sort of provide our experience from Singapore and how we have collaborated and how we have done some successful research so that actually we can learn from each other, as well as maybe we can develop some collaborations too. Okay, so last year, November 4th, we started a National Dental Research Institute Singapore. So I am from National Dental Research of Singapore. I am the Director of International Affairs and Director of Basic and Translational Research. So this is a new institution, and this is one of the few dental national level dental research institute in the world, and definitely I think first in Asia. So with us, the Karolinska Institute from Sweden, they are our partners, and in fact in the field of dentistry they are #1 in the world. So they were really interested in collaborating with us because of our reputation in this area. So this is some photos. The Vice Chancellor from KI as well as the ambassador from Sweden came to initiate this project. I think it was a great success. Well, in NDRIS, or the National Dental Research in Singapore, we have three key areas. It's very important for an institution to select their strength. So we have selected three key areas, which is a Singapore Orofacial Initiative. We call this, SOFI. That is like a medtech initiative. We are developing new implants, new dentures, so on and so forth related to dentistry. The second one is a Singapore Oral Population Health Initiative. So we have actually recruited a one of top dental research in the world from Australia. Unfortunately, because of COVID, he is still waiting in Australia to be, to arrive to Singapore, hopefully very soon. And we have the third initiative, Singapore Oral Microbiome Initiative, which I lead. So I'll talk more about the, Singapore Oral Microbiome Initiative, or me. Yeah, so in NDRIS, SingHealth is the largest healthcare cluster in Singapore. We have many institutions, the hospitals, research institute, the many institutions that we can collaborate within SingHealth. So it's already, we are having a very strong collaboration with the clinical staff, scientists, engineers, so on and so forth. So this and all is very important to collaborate, as the previous speakers also mentioned. The collaboration is the key. So when they appoint me as a director of research and international affairs, so I selected, I thought of like what are the pillars in any research institute, whether it's NDRIS, university, so on and so forth. So for me, right, like there are three things that we have to focus on. The publication, which is very important. That's how you communicate with the world. So good publication, of course, bring a huge amount of reputation and recognition, right? But publication is also not enough. You have to innovate. So innovation is a paramount important for an institution. So you might not get a publication of innovation, but you might get a product. It's very important. And the reputation. So of course, the publications and innovations will bring you the reputation, but there are other ways that you can build up reputation. For instance, like you can be a part of international organization. You can be a member of world international some consortium, so on and so forth. For instance, now I am the treasurer of International Association of Dental Research in Southeast Asia, and I am the secretary of International Association for Asia Pacific. So it's a great opportunity for you to collaborate with other parties and also build up your reputation. Okay, so now what are the success ingredients in any institution? I believe the foundation is people. People are very important. So whether it's the senior professors, junior professors, our new staff members, the students, the academic staff, research staff, all are very important for institutions. So we have to look after people, and we have to get the right people in the right place. It's very important for success. And then the funding, of course, there are constraints, depending on the country, depending on the institutions, but that's why you need to collaborate. You need to find the right partners. If you have a good collaboration, everything will become much easier, right? Even with a little bit of funding, you can do a really nice work. I have seen really great papers, great innovation from countries that you would not expect, but they collaborate with the right partners. And the key is, again, I believe the process, and as you know, in Singapore, I'm sure it's one of the best countries in the world for this process. We have a very smooth process. Everything is clear, transparent. We want to do the things, and there are a lot of support for that. So that's very important, because success is a process, not an event. For instance, like I know sometimes it's very difficult for researcher to get the approvals. There are many hurdles, so that even if you have an enthusiastic newcomer, new researcher, when the researcher wants to obtain funding and do some research, they get really, discouraged by the process. So it's very important for leadership in the institution to make sure that the process are smooth, straightforward, without many hurdles. Okay. Yeah, so the research, I mean, research is a really broad term. You know, we can do various research, basic science research is very important. Translation, but it's more important to translate it into the clinical settings, especially in the healthcare sector, as well as the clinical research. I don't have time to go into details, but in Singapore and SingHealth, I mean, we always believe the patient at the heart of all we do. So we try to sort of, you know, like focus our research that will benefit the patients in future. I think Sri Lanka should do the same thing. I mean, any country should do the same, especially in the COVID era. Ultimately, our research should benefit the people, the patients. Okay, so a little bit about like you know, my platform, Singapore Oral Microbiomics Initiative. So we focus on 3 areas. Again, the biofilms. You know, biofilms are, you know, surface attached microbial communities, and it is known according to CDC that at least 65% to 80% of all the infectious diseases are due to biofilm mode of growth. And in dentistry, you know, most of our diseases like dental decay, you know, the gum diseases, you know, the implant problems are due to biofilm. So we study that, we have models and so on and so forth. That's one of the areas if you are interested in collaborating. Of course, we are interested in microbiome. We have huge interest with the human microbiome project. So and in the oral you know, region, there is a definite link between the oral health and the systemic health. So we have, I'm trying to, you know, go through these slides quickly because we have a couple of more slides. So we are trying to work with you know, clinicians and engineers, as even the bioinformaticians, you know, the computer biologists, to develop the AI, artificial intelligence based database, which you know, which will get the patient's data as well as the sequencing data in a, you know, in a sort of in future that will allow us to predict or at least, you know, like with some predictive value, some diagnostic value for the systemic diseases using the sequencing data. So we have published that in critical reviews in microbiology, this concept. So I'm really you know, interested in collaborating with you know, like-minded people to explore the oral and systemic link, especially oral microbiome. And you know, Singapore, we have a really great advantage because our databases, medical databases, are very well curated. So in fact, you know, because the people have recognized that, and in fact, if you listen to the Tim Cook last week, the Apple's announcement, right? He mentioned, you know, for the Apple Watch, they have a special application only for Singapore. So Singapore will become the first country to get this app. That because they believe, you know, Singapore has a good healthcare system, the world-class system, so that we can actually encourage our citizens to stay healthy. So hopefully our database will also come into reality one day. So we work on salivary biomarkers, very important, very interesting area, especially the COVID, you know, era. As you know, there are some research showing that the saliva can be a you know, medium to diagnose COVID, and we have done some work. I will share with you later. Yeah, so now, I mean, we initiated a new institution last year, November, but we had a lot of plans. Then the COVID came, right? Nobody expected that, right? So like the title of my talk, you know, we were taken back by the hurdles, but we thought this is an opportunity for us to shine, because if you use it wisely, if you innovate, that is this is a great opportunity for us to shine. So in Singapore as a whole, there was there's a great innovation drive. You know, so I mean, I'm sure you know, a lot of Singapore innovations are in the market. We have helping other countries. I will share some more slides, but it is definitely a national drive to innovate, especially in the pandemic time. So I will share, like, again, some publications from Singapore, because the publications are important. When you do good work, you have to show that you are doing good work. That's how you get the reputation. Now there are a lot of publications from Singapore, but there are some key publications in Lancet. You know, we have analyzed the COVID patients. We have analyzed the genome of that. You know, in fact, there are very interesting publications on the healthcare workers, and they, unfortunately, we have 50,000 patients in Singapore. But if you look the numbers carefully, I think we believe that Singapore has the lowest mortality rate in the world. With 50,000, we have only 27 mortalities. So, but during this process, actually, the healthcare workers also got infected. So there is a paper for that. And if you are interested in the policy making, the fighting fake news in COVID-19 era is very important. So, whatever you do, I think it's very important to understand Sri Lankan academics that we should translate into a publication so that people know that we are doing good work. And in fact, Sri Lanka has done remarkably well during the pandemic. But I don't know whether we have really communicated that, and we have been given the due recognition and credit for this success, right? So it's very important to communicate, and publications play a vital role in that aspect. Again, innovation is the key. Again, Singapore has done various, innovative projects like Bioforum, the technology to monitor the patients remotely and to identify the COVID-19 related, physiological biomarkers that indicate the duration. So we have invented, new robots that, sort of disinfect the shopping malls, new ventilators, so there are a lot of innovations. But I will share you some key innovation that will impact the whole world, not just Singapore. Yeah, so this is like the diagnostic kit, we developed in Singapore, A-STAR, one of the leading research institute. So in fact, as you can see in this slide, so already the many countries are using Singapore's kit, which is very efficient. In fact, we were able to help Sri Lanka. We were able to donate some of the test kits, the COVID-19 detection test kit to Sri Lanka as well. So therefore, when you develop the very vibrant, very strong research culture, it will not only sort of helpful, beneficial for the country, but for the region as well. And you can see from what I have written here, it's a collaboration. You cannot just do it by yourself. There is the multi-level, multi-institutional collaboration, and if you say that the diagnostic development, or DXD, is a national initiative. So in Singapore, there is a great government support for innovation, and there is we call it like Smart Nation initiative. So we try to develop everything innovative in a fast, more sort of successful than any other in the world. So that's the attitude we should have. I know Sri Lanka is trying to do this as well. This is a good time. So Singapore can provide ample sort of examples and even help to do that. And as you know, Duke NUS, my institution, which I'm very proud to represent. Of course, I'm not developing a vaccine or drug, but my colleagues, my neighbors, neighbor lab, they are developing that viral mix. So the COVID-19 drug from Singapore-based firm entered the final trials. So COVID arrived, actually it started in January, but we got the really feel of COVID in sort of March, April period. But now we are already in the clinical trials to develop drugs. So that is how fast we capture this opportunity. And as you know, it's world famous Duke NUS vaccine trial is one of the leading vaccine trials in the world. So it has also gone to the first phase of clinical trials. So within very short period of time, to identify the disease, developing a test kit, developing a drug to the vaccine, we have really fast phase, fast track. And you can imagine the thing I mentioned about the process, right? If the process is rigid, there are a lot of barriers, we would not be able to achieve this task. In fact, the government, the universities, they initiated COVID-19 research, innovative grants, and they actually fast track the ethical approvals as well, right? So it's very important to have this, process intact for any country, any university. In fact, so you would ask like, wow, what would you, how about your contribution? In fact, because of this curiosity and intention to contribute to the humanity. In fact, when the COVID-19 came to the peak in Singapore by April, I went to a dormitory and worked sort of like more than 1 month to see hundreds of COVID patients. And it was a great experience for me. And as a dentist, I think I got a unique experience. But this one, as an international expert in infection control, so we initiated a number of projects that help the infection control. So, and we published some of them, some are still ongoing. In fact, we answered one of the burning questions in the world, like can the commercial mouth rinses reduce the salivary SARS-CoV-2 level? And we run the randomized clinical trial, I think the first in the world, and we are about to publish our results as well. So you got to take these opportunities and act fast if you want to lead the world in this research area. And I'm really happy, I mean, I try to see what are the innovations done in Sri Lanka during this pandemic. And I'm really happy, like University of Peradeniya has done a great contribution. Of course, there are a lot of people, I'm sure there is, I mean, we are not lack of brains. We are a very smart nation, Sri Lankans, and it just matter of providing the opportunities, a little bit of infrastructure, funding, encouragement. I think Sri Lanka can do wonders. In fact, I'm very happy they mentioned Sri Lanka as innovative thinkers. We just need the better facilities. So COVID, luckily, I think COVID-19 has, sort of encouraged local investors. So I believe you need to take this opportunity. This is a great initiative by University of Peradeniya, Professor Shameen, and NSF. But take this forward and collaborate with other countries and experts, and push for the publications, innovations, and international reputation. Okay, so with that, I will summarize what are the challenges and opportunities ahead for all of us, for Sri Lanka, for Singapore, Australia, to the world. Any research institute, I think we should go for publication, innovation, and the reputation as well. So international collaboration is the key again. And hopefully the more translation and applied research that will bring positive impact, I mean, for the daily life of the people is very important. I mean, now we have realized we have to bring it to the people, our research is very important. So with that, again, I would like to thank the, University of Peradeniya for this invitation. And I would like to conclude, with another quote from Franklin Roosevelt, another World War II quote: "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." This is a tough time. So if you can overcome and successful, you'll be one of the best in the world. So we are very happy to collaborate. So there are my information, and all the best to the University of Peradeniya and Sri Lankan universities to make a successful journey ahead. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Professor Jaya, for your good thoughts. So I think we are having many questions as well being posted. So keep posting your questions, and we are happy to answer them towards the end of this program. So thank you again, Professor Jaya. And next, representing the University of Connecticut, we have Professor Stephen Shenzhou to share his expertise with us.
I'll just organize my hello everybody, hello. And let me share my slides. Can you see the slides?
Sure, yes, we can see. Yeah. Yes, we can see, Professor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first, let me very much thank Professor Shameen Jinadasa and Mr. Pradeep for organizing the session and for inviting me. And I can tell you, since we're spread from Australia to the US, that this is pre-breakfast time in Eastern US. This conference started at 4:30 in the morning, and it's now more or less 5:30 in the morning. So I won't miss breakfast this morning. I'm very happy to have had the opportunity of hearing the three speakers before me. I want to congratulate the news from Professor telling us that the U of P has exceeded the University of Colombo in the number of publications is extremely good news for University of Peradeniya, who has competed over the years with the University of Colombo. Professor Akanayaka, who has provided us a formal approach to the advantages of international collaboration, and the exciting news from Professor Seneviratne of the collaboration with Singapore, and I certainly would like to know more of how that collaboration started. I'm going to present to you a slightly different but very much on the topic by focusing on a case study and seeing what we've learned from that case study. And that case study focuses first on the fact that I'm a medical anthropologist conducting research in a whole variety of areas. And in that process have, as a result of the collaborations in these various locations, have done things that I think are very much consistent with anthropological focus, but nonetheless is very much transdisciplinary. So as part of the work in these various locations, work that particularly focused on maternal and child health, on HIV, on sexual risk, we've established collaborations in Peru with the Universidad Cayetano Heredia, with the University of Mauritius, with the International Institute of Population Sciences in India, with Hanoi Medical University most recently that I didn't put on now. But my best and longest relationship has linked universities in the north to universities in the south has been the one with the University of Peradeniya. So the maintenance of a relationship over the course of 40 years is relatively remarkable. The tendency has been to be a project-to-project relationship. It's hard to string a whole series of projects together, to have the resources and success and even the multi-generational hand-down to be able to make those projects consistent enough to sustain over these periods. So I give you a little bit of the combination of both the University of Connecticut, the main campus of which is on in a more rural area. That's the upper right. And about 40 miles away is our campus at the University of Connecticut Health Center, which includes the schools of medicine and dental medicine, as well as the university hospital, and that's in the lower right. Of course, we've come to know that the University of Peradeniya is among the most beautiful campuses in the entire world. And I don't have to, I see from Mr. Pradeep's background that he has the same perspective for the University of Peradeniya. It's a beautiful university, and it's been a remarkable long-term relationship between the University of Connecticut and the University of Peradeniya. I'm going to give you a little bit of that case study that carried us across these 40 years. This slide represents the combination of the University of Connecticut and the University of Peradeniya. The upper right is our main campus. It's located about 40 miles from the lower right. That's our School of Medicine, School of Dental Medicine, and University Hospital in Connecticut. And you're very familiar with the left-hand side of what I consider to be among the most beautiful universities in the world. What I would like to do is focus on the case study of the University of Peradeniya and the University of Connecticut, and extract from that a series of general lessons learned that I think create the guidelines for moving beyond this to the future. This all started our collaboration with Herbert Aponso, who many of you know is still practicing medicine in his mid-90s, and the Tsuva Sevena Hospital on the Kandy Road. He had organized a very far-reaching approach, an interdisciplinary team that included economists, physicians, people from agriculture and others to address health issues, first in Mahaveli C, as the entire area of the Mahaveli was opened up for settlement and agriculture, and also the traditional wet zone area of Mavanella. At the same time, we were developing in the Department of Community Medicine, which was my home department at the School of Medicine, the Center for International Community Health Studies. In 1982, a colleague of mine, Professor Pelto, and I came to the University of Peradeniya for a WHO-sponsored 6-country workshop on community participation. And the idea of that was to bring together and feature the work of Professor Raponso and his team as a model for how the country representatives from 6 different countries would begin to establish the kind of research that could be applied in the general realm of community and public health to the welfare of villages in Sri Lanka. In 1983, Professor Aponso made his first visit to Yukon to establish the collaboration. And my wife, who's also a medical anthropologist, and I joined the Aponso team later in that year for 2 months of research and data analysis. Now, what brings together 2 people or more to start out this collaborative process? Well, generally it's an accident, or it may be a directed accident, we could call it, because this is a little bit like dating. Sometimes we call it speed dating. You come together, and if there's a meeting of the minds, if there's a personal relationship, if there's a common set of goals, if there's a complementary methodology, if there's the opportunity to share perspectives, and that all works out well, you may enter into an engagement and maybe even a marriage as things move along. In 1984, the University of Connecticut received a grant for faculty exchanges with the University of Peradeniya. And I'm sorry, I've gone too far. No. And you're seeing the change in slides, I hope.
Yes, Professor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And that exchange produced That exchange program produced almost 16 faculty. I may have gone too far. Let's see. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I skipped ahead. So well, I'm sorry about this. Okay. So the University of Connecticut received the grant for faculty exchanges, and almost 16 faculty at that particular time, both senior and junior faculty, came to Connecticut, and in return, 9 of our faculty went to Sri Lanka. So again, this was another opportunity with some resources to develop those personal and collaborative relationships that are so crucial in this inter-institutional and inter-university relationship. In 1984, Professor Panto was our first visit, Center for International Community Health Studies, we called it KICS, visiting professor. And then 84 to 87, we had the 12 University of Peradeniya and 7 UConn faculty members taking 23 exchange trips that range from 1 to 4 months, resulting in a whole variety of products, including curriculum development, collaborative research, and student exchanges. In 1987, Professor Panto established the Center for Intersectoral Community Health Studies. So we had a kind of a KICS-P and a KICS-C. And as you can see, Professor Panto becomes a star in all of this, because he really became our leader in the effort to both collaborate and to do good research that would impact on the communities in the resettlement area and in the wet zone. In 1989, we were joined through the work of one of our professors at UConn and Professor Ruth Peters to establish what we call the Triangle Program, which involved the University of Antwerp. The triangle was the University of Antwerp, the University of Peradeniya, and University of Connecticut, to train junior faculty in bringing together the health and medicine with the social sciences. And this was an innovative feature. There was a considerable recognition in many of the northern countries of the need to have a much better understanding of the cultural context and community dynamics, since many of the high-tech medical and health programs were doing well in their narrow realm, but as they moved into the community, there was a considerable amount of complications and misunderstandings that came from not understanding the wider context of health and medicine. So as a result, from 1990 to 91, we had 2 one-month training programs and funds for field research in many different areas, in health and agriculture, and in diabetes, and maternal and child health. Funding these, providing seed grants of approximately $5,000 in those days, that went a long way to look at to create the preliminary data that would lead to larger projects that could be externally funded. From 1993 to 94, we had several of the more junior faculty coming through Fulbright support to the University of Connecticut. From 95 to 99, we were fortunate to receive a USIA research grant linked to their Women in AIDS program on youth and sexual risk in Sri Lanka. And this was a very exciting project, resulting in a number of publications. By the way, the Triangle program also had a special issue of social science and medicine, and had resulted in a number of papers. The youth and sexual risk in Sri Lanka also served to create a greater understanding of both urban youth in Kandy, in the slum areas of Kandy, but also youth as they expressed sexual health and sexual risk at on the University of Peradeniya campus. As a result of this work, our research team was selected for the opportunity for a retreat to Lake Como and Bellagio, the Rockefeller Mansion, which hosted teams in various fields, ranging from media to arts, to our team looking at sexual risk, and our very frank discussions in that area were somewhat to the shock of the Sri Lankans who were part of the staff of Bellagio, but I'll tell you those stories at a later time. And in 2000, the Asian Pacific Social Science and Medicine meetings were held in Kandy that a number of us were involved in. Also in 2000, Montecito de Silva, now a retired professor from sociology, and I, who had collaborated on the work in youth and sexual risk, met with the Ford Foundation in Mahabalipuram in India to present our work, and that resulted in my involvement in 2 decades of work on HIV in India. And then we had a 15-year gap, but that gap was renewed. The link was renewed by a meeting with Professor Tu Silva, resulting in our getting engaged in CKDU. And at the moment, we have funding from the Fogarty International Center of the U.S. National Institutes of Health for a field project in Vilgamua, focused on the factors associated. Although most people are searching for the etiology of CKDU, this project was focused on understanding the factors that are associated with moving people from stage 3 to end-stage renal disease in the progression of CKDU. Just a few names. Many people, Professor Heva Vitarna, an economist, was also a part of Herbert Aponso, Malcolm Fernando, Piacili Vedasinghe. The second generation, which was more or less parallel to mine, included a number of people whose names you may know. And the third generation, Nishanta Nanayakara, Rahana Chandrajit, and Shameen Jinadasa are some of the many people we're continuing our relationship with. So what are the lessons learned? Well, before I look at that, after all, we're bringing together 2 universities with many different differences between them. You know, universities are not so easy to work with, period. That is that they're complex institutions. Collaborating with other disciplines can be complicated. Other campuses can be complicated. So imagine when two institutions in different parts of the world are getting together, that can also create complications. And of course, there are big differences in infrastructure. With the advent of computers, of electronic communication, the deficiencies in infrastructure in southern universities have been overcome to a certain degree. But the budgets are very different. The level of salaries between North and South universities are extremely different, which has implications for sharing grants and external funding. Administrative procedures can be very complicated. You know, it was interesting that the grant that I mentioned in the 1990s for youth and sexual risk in Sri Lanka, there was no problem in developing budgets and agreements across the universities for the University of Connecticut to do a sub-award with the University of Peradeniya. Yet when our 2016 to 2020 project was developed, we had great difficulty in dealing with the administrative issues of sub-awards, and eventually had to work more with the Kandy City Hospital than we did with the University of Peradeniya. Of course, the two institutions also have different priorities. It's very important that those priorities get addressed on both sides if the relationship is going to continue. And of course, there's a different culture. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But great potential for both exciting and innovative work and miscommunication as well. Sometimes when email first came into the picture, I characterized it as a faster way to miscommunicate. So that has to be watched out for. IRBs and ethical committees are another story entirely. Our IRB here at the University of Connecticut drives our researchers crazy. Working, I don't know how much your ethical committee creates complications, but having two that have to be met in the exchange doubles the problem. And of course, there are complex promotional guidelines. The one that I find particularly strange in our collaborative work in India is that individuals receive less credit for being a senior author if there are junior authors. That belies the very process of collaboration that we frequently are promoting as part of the university-to-university collaboration. So if you're doing a project like youth and sexual risk in Sri Lanka, or you're doing work on CKDU, you want to demonstrate that this work is a product of the collaborative process, but in the very process of adding second and third and fourth authors, at least in India, and I'm not sure it doesn't apply to Sri Lanka, that you're diminishing the credit that the senior author gets. So what about lessons learned? First of all, that we need to emphasize the fact that this is not so much institution to institution, but person to person. You have to like the people you're working with. You have to get to know their families. You have to be out in the field together. You have to break bread together. And over time, establish not only partnerships, but strong friendships. So I think that needs to be emphasized. And when we talk about these collaborations, we need to acknowledge that they are person-to-person collaborations. I think that we need to do the kind of work that Professor Senaratne mentioned as contributing to the welfare of the country and the communities that we work in, that our collaborations work best when we're using our research skills and products to improve the well-being of the public. Next, that this is in no particular order, but there needs to be a strong commitment to transdisciplinary research. You know, there's in the descriptions of my previous colleagues, it's clear that transdisciplinary research, and the reason I use the word transdisciplinary comes from the idea that interdisciplinary may be a partnership between two disciplines. Multidisciplinary brings a number of different disciplines together. Transdisciplinary really means that we're sharing a common model, and that each of the disciplines have an equal investment in and perspective on a common model that drives the research and the intervention. Collaborations need to meet the needs of faculty members from both institutions, and that has to be very much an awareness. It can't be that this comes to be to the benefit, to the unequal benefit of people in the northern institutions, but has to be involved with the career enhancement of faculty in both institutions. Funding is an absolute requirement, and it's very hard to keep this collaboration going without a continuous search for financial resources. And the presentation by Professor Akanayaka indicates that this becomes a critical part of the inter-university collaboration. Misunderstandings will happen, and from that misunderstanding, I'll just give you one example. I unfortunately described, we as a part of our work in India, we were able to link up with the CDC, who indicated that free of charge, they would send characterized urine samples to the International Institute of Population Sciences for us to test the adequacy of our PCR kit in India to characterize those STDs. Unfortunately, there was a problem in getting the urine samples through customs in Mumbai. And the end result was that the samples melted, and that was the end of our process. So I described this as I indicated that in English, that what a shame that this had happened. Unfortunately, the use of shame was interpreted as my blaming our team in Mumbai, while I didn't mean that. I mean, it was just something out of the control of both of us. But these miscommunications have to be made aware of, and the need to address them be very important. I think it's extremely important that people who enter into these relationships learn from each other, learn about disciplines, backgrounds, culture, and experience those directly. Over the years, For example, the collaborators have between our two universities have entered into the worlds of culture and religion on both sides, and that has been a very important part of the process. There needs to be support from the institutions themselves. It's not good enough that this is just individuals from both institutions, but there needs to be solid support for this inter-university collaboration on the part of both institutions. And that can be extremely important in terms of facilitating the movement of projects and collaborations. There's no doubt that people who enter into this collaboration have to be prepared for the fact that this is extra work, frequently needing capital investments of their own time and resources before funding. And so I think it's important to understand that this is over and above the regular work, at least in the beginning. The next point is that all kinds of things happen. Research, budgeting never quite works out as it's planned. And there needs to be a continuous re-budgeting and finding ways of addressing challenges. So patience and flexibility are keys, and that becomes even more complicated when the collaborators may be 10,000 miles apart. There needs to be guidelines developed to share credit and sharing funds, and that can be especially complicated when salaries on one side may be 10 times higher than the salaries on another side, and complicated in terms of who's going to be senior authors, who's going to be in the order of authors for a particular publication. And finally, electronic communication has been great. We're on Zoom. That's a great new innovation. I wish we were all buying stock in Zoom these days, but it doesn't replace face-to-face communication. We don't have the flexibility to learn about each other as sufficiently as necessary without seeing each other person to person. So all in all, we must recognize that south to north institutional collaboration is not for all of us. For some of us, it's our passion. For others of us, we have to bring those individuals along, sometimes, as we say, kicking and screaming. We can get resistance from different parts of the institution. And so the extra work also can produce many frustrations. However, from my perspective, it's been the hallmark of my professional and personal life to have these collaborations. And foremost in those collaborations is the University of Peradeniya. It's multi-generational faculty members. The 4 decades that we've been able to work together has certainly contributed to my learning and growth as an applied anthropologist. So I thank you all for this process, and I look forward to another 40 years between our institutions. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Professor Steve. And I think this program managed to join both East and West together as well today. And special thanks to you, Professor Steve. You had to get up early in the morning for this program. We had to organize it so that it would be convenient for the Sri Lankan members to participate. So thank you again, Professor Steve. And next, we would like to open the panel discussion now. And now I would like to invite Dr. Nanda Munawardana, who was the former director of the International Relations of Peradeniya University. He now serves as the director of the research and international relations of Sri Lanka Technological Campus, who will be moderating this session. And I would like to invite all our panelists as well to come on board. For this program, it's possible to switch on the video mode.
Okay, thank you very much, Roshan. At the outset, I would like to thank International Relations Office, University of Peradeniya and National Science Foundation inviting me to moderate this session. And I am honored to be moderate this session with the eminent four speakers who have described the importance of international collaborations within their speeches. And actually we got some questions and suggestions when we post this seminar via emails, and also today we got some feedback from our participants. So I will direct some questions from the emails that we have received and the feedback that we have got from the participants. And first, I would like to direct my first question to Professor Saman Halgamuge, because I think you have really worked to develop international research and international collaborations, and you have written so many articles related to that. And in addition to your presentation, so today we have so many young researchers listening to this webinar. So can you briefly explain how international collaborations will enhance their research career? And also the second part of the question we received from the participant. The second one is how international collaborations will improve the rankings of the university. Professor Saman?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question and also for the opportunity to answer that. So there are many ways it can benefit the individual researcher and also the country. So something very well known, I would say it's not a secret anymore, it's very well known that if you have publications with international authors, it tend to get a little bit more citations. And it's very difficult to explain that, but it's possibly, we probably allowed to cite papers written by researchers in our own universities or everywhere in the world, right? So, so if you have researchers from multiple places, of course, the paper has to be written well and it has to be good. And so because you combine knowledge from different parts of the world and the paper also become more readable, that is another explanation. So these papers get more citations. So that's a very well-known thing. And I have seen that in my own research. And then I have asked a major ranking organization, and then they said they have known it for years. So the second thing, and how would it benefit the individual researcher? And okay, Sri Lanka is, in terms of research, Sri Lanka is still a small country. So if you want to find someone in a specific expertise, you might find the person, but you might also not find that person. So you may have to go, for example, in a larger country like India next door, and you're more likely to find a specific expertise needed to apply for your own research grant. So if your research grant need someone with that sort of expertise, you have to get the best person around. And doesn't need to be from Sri Lanka. It can be from India, China, Australia, and so on. So if you demonstrate that you have picked really key experts in the areas needed for the grant, crossing the boundaries of your own country, so there is advantage because the funding organizations also see that. So I was involved in a grant, I think it was funded by National Science Foundation, submitted by Kelaniya University 2 years ago. And so they got the grant. It's related to electronic engineering. And Kelaniya University doesn't have an engineering faculty, not yet. So, so they went out and got people from with certain expertise in that area. So it can benefit the individual researcher simply by enhancing the chances of getting an application for the grant or publication accepted, because it increases the quality and the readability and it becomes more competitive. And the country benefits because it's international relations is there's a third point. International relations and joint publication with other universities is a key criterion for many ranking bodies. So the ranking of the University of Peradeniya goes up if University of Peradeniya collaborate with more internationally and also write research papers with international co-authors. It goes up. It's simply a fact. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Saman. And the second question goes to Professor Janaka Ekanayake. Actually, we are discussing the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But unfortunately, today we don't have mathematician in our panel. So we got the question from mathematician. So he asked the role of the mathematician to develop a collaborative research project, especially in science, engineering, and technology. So Professor Janaka, I think you have worked very closely with the Department of Mathematics, so you have the answer. Janak, please unmute your mic. Okay.
Thanks, Nanda, for the question, and I have seen the question is in the chat box somewhere.
Yeah.
So let me find the name of the person who asked the question, if I can. Anyway, now the thing is, a lot of engineers are doing mathematics. I think this is Nalini is asking this question. So a lot of engineers are using mathematics extensively. So the thing is, like if the engineering faculty wanted to do collaborative research, I think every engineering faculty in the country has a mathematical department. So they usually try to tap that department than, you know, going out of the engineering faculty. So we do use mathematics. I think any research in our area is heavily built on mathematics, but we use mainly the mathematicians from our universities or the faculties than, you know, going to like general mathematicians.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Janaka. Then next question goes to Professor Jaya Seneviratne. I think you started with the very interesting quote, never let a good crisis go to waste. So I think Sri Lanka, we have a very good opportunity, because I think now Sri Lanka is look like a very normal condition. We started our academic work, unlike most of the other countries. So we started everything, almost everything is back to normal. So I think as a Sri Lankan scientist, we have very good opportunity to work very closely with industry and other aspects. From your presentation, you explained very clearly the importance of transforming the activities that you are conducting in labs to practical products. So can you elaborate more on that aspect? Because in Sri Lanka, we don't convert this laboratory experiment into real products, but using your Health system, I think you have developed a lot of vaccines and other stuff and transform it to real applications. So how Sri Lankan scientists convert that step? Because I think it's a great opportunity, as you mentioned, because we stop importing a lot of stuff and we have new things. So we have very good opportunity to transform the things that we have developed into commercial scale.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Nanda, for the question and the opportunity for this discussion. This is, I mean, this question, the answer to this question itself is a lecture, right? It's a very broad one, right? But I try to summarize in my first few slides that the what is the pillars of success, what are the ingredients, how we can transform. So it's just not one thing, you know. I mean, of course, you know, I'm very thankful to the Sri Lankan education that, you know, we all have to be, but what I learned from coming outside Sri Lanka and working in different countries is the process, you know. So we have the people, it's there. I mean, we are from Sri Lanka, we have the genes, you know, that full come from, you know, centuries. So we are not lack of people. We have enough brains, enough intelligent people. We may have a little bit of difficulty in funding, but I think it's okay. You know, if you are smart enough, you can collaborate, as you know, other speakers also elaborate with the other countries or other institutions to share and collaborate for the common purpose. What I think what we can improve on is the process, you know. Sometimes the structured process, maybe, I mean, I know that, I mean, the new generation is trying to do a lot, but it still as not rigid as the countries like, you know, Singapore, Australia, and UK, you know. Now, especially if you give the example of Singapore now, as a nation, it's you know, we are very fast-sighted, very technically savvy, we adapt quickly, we move fast, you know. So that fast-paced life, even in the, not only the general public, but even in the academic sector, if you look at honestly and dig into the problem, that is not there, you know, that drive is not there. We move very fast. When you get the problem, we quickly find the answers, we quickly collaborate, and we move, you know. That's why Singapore was able to develop a drug and vaccine within few months. Is amazing, right? So we can, I mean, Sri Lanka can do the same thing. I mean, I'm sure, but it's a structured process, you know. For instance, like we emphasize on the innovation because we have realized, I mean, I already told you publication is important, but I'm not like a person like a publish or perish, you know. It's like you just publish anything. It's not good enough now. So you have to publish the impactful research. It's impact the key word, you know. So what is the impact to the patient, to the general public? You know, that's important. So we have to encourage that, you know, not just the sake of publishing. You know, you publish something for the sake, you know, just it's not it's not a good way to move forward. And also we have, you know, a lot of emphasis on the commercialization. You know, of course, Singapore is a small country, but we produce more things than any in the Southeast Asia, I guess, you know. So it's a very driven country. So likewise, you know, we have workshop for entrepreneurship, you know, startups, and regular workshops. So even the University of Peradeniya or any other university, I think you don't have time to relax if you really want to bring up research. There are a lot of things you can do, you know, and learn from other countries. So therefore, I mean, itself, I took like 5 to 10 minutes, right? But my short answer is, especially the leadership is very important. Leadership should have a you know, far-sighted vision, you know, and then give the opportunity for the younger people, the second generation, to come up and develop research with you know, help from other Sri Lankan scientists around the world. We have, you know, great experts from Australia, UK. I think if you ask help, anybody is like, I mean, we are in debt to Sri Lankan education and Sri Lanka, so we want to serve, you know. It's not for the self benefit, so they will definitely help. So it's a great initiative by the NSF to develop this database, and definitely they will help, you know, and link with the young people. Especially now, I asked for some data from the University of Peradeniya. Roshan kindly sent me the number of PhD students, the master students produced from the UOP last 3 years. And you have like more than 100, you know, postgraduates, especially the PhDs and MPhils, you know, so that's 100 theses, you know, already. So what is the impact of that? How many people have published that? How many people have converted the product? So it's very important to have a structured process and monitor them and give incentives to the staff. You know, some people, you know, I know there should be incentive to research, right? Some people are passionate, but if you given a good opportunity, so it's not a simple, straightforward answer. But if you start this process in this, you know, important juncture, I think we can sort of, we have an advantage, because Sri Lanka is normal, you know, you have a luxury of going to the work, you know, not many countries, a lot of people are in lockdowns and various limitations. So please, this is just opportunity. You have done a great initiative. and I wish all the best. And if I can, I'm very happy to help as much as I can. Thank you.
If I might add on to Professor Seneviratne's comments, I think this idea of the crisis as an opportunity. I think that when COVID-19 manifested itself, and in many parts of the world, that was certainly February of this year, there should be, for those who are involved in international research and collaboration, that everybody becomes a COVID researcher. In effect, I can't think of a field not affected by COVID. And so, as you pointed out, we have innovations in the realm of dentistry, because that involves both saliva, respiratory issues, the ecologists, the engineers, the anthropologists, the sociologists. There isn't a field, even the mathematicians, I'm sure, can deal with the multiple aspects. And when have we ever had a situation in the entire world where the whole world was shut down at one particular point? So the environmentalists are very much a part of this. That nimbleness, that flexibility has to be there. And if there are solid relationships that have been built on particular collaborations, that ability to respond to new challenges should be even more enhanced as a result, not just trapped into one narrow field.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Stefan. Actually, next question also goes to him. I think you have answered during your presentation, but I got the question from one of the participants. Steve, he asked that what are the factors for the success of bilateral and multilateral research collaborations? And also he wants to know, some kind of advice for local researchers to establish successful collaborations. I think you have 40 plus years research collaborations in Sri Lankan researchers. I think you started researchers when I was going to kindergarten. So I think you have the best answer to this question, Steve.
Well, first of all, I haven't aged across this whole process. So that's one advantage. I'm still as young as I was when I was dealing with the first generation. But it's a complex, the first question, I suppose, is how do you develop collaborations? And that comes from meeting people. It's not so easy to start out with an idea and then search for relationships that can contribute to that idea. So where might that come from? It might come from your thesis guide. It might come from a participation in an international meeting. It might come from personal communication through email. But it's very important to develop the relationship before the grant. So you're developing the relationship on the basis of a meeting of the minds, of learning from each other. Before then, you're trying to meet the requirements and the submission of a grant. Then, of course, there needs to be the kind of mutual work on that grant that can come to a common perspective, that can come to an equitable relationship. It's very hard. Our best grants, the ones with the most money and the hardest to get, are from the National Institutes of Health. And nobody who has done this over a long period of time has an experienced failure in getting the grant. So there was a time when I hadn't had one turned down, and by the time I hit the 1990s, I had plenty of those turned down. So the willingness to understand and see the deficiencies and come back in again with an application, that's another aspect that is very important. So it's very hard to generalize, and anybody who does grant writing workshops will recognize the deficiencies. What is best is having one person who from another institution or from another discipline who can work intensively to make the grant application as good as it possibly can be, and then to learn from that process, whether successful or not successful. I think it was Professor Akanayaka who pointed out that sometimes you shoot widely, sometimes you shoot narrowly, but the most important thing is to learn from that process and make it better the next time with the same collaborators. So very hard to answer that question. It's probably the answer is 40 years long, but I hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Steve. Actually, an next question related to the funding. Actually, without funding, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to do good collaborative research or exchange programs. So my next question is for both Professor Saman and Professor Seneviratne. So in Sri Lanka, I have spoken to the chairman of the NSF, Professor Ranjith Senaratne, in the morning, and all Sri Lankan scientists are wondering that whether what is government going to increase or decrease the funding for NSF, because NSF is the premier funding body in Sri Lanka, and also whether they are going to cut funds for the 2021. I just want to have a kind of a very short answer from Professor Saman and Professor Jaya about the situation in Australia and Singapore. What do you feel about the funding for 2021 with the effect of COVID? Professor Saman, yeah.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. And of course, and funding will be constrained, definitely, most definitely. So, but I think more relevant to Sri Lanka situation is that if you apply for research grants and if you collaborate internationally, and as Professor Janaka Ekanayake explained, there are so many possibilities, and you can also apply for overseas funding together. So there may be European grants that you can apply, and Australian grants, Singaporean grants, and US-based grants. So I think it's not, I'm not saying they're easy, but what I'm saying is if you can get a grant, then it's quite a lot of money. And so you have to develop the consortium over many years. So you can't wake up and say, all right, next week I'm going to apply for this. So you have to plan ahead. So maybe years ahead. So I work with this person in Sweden, this person in Hungary, and this person in Germany. So maybe in 2 years' time, when we have something in common, and now we put an application together for European Union. So I think the building up a strategy can be helpful. And of course, the crisis will reduce the funding available in some countries and some programs. But I believe it is going to be temporary. For example, without research, how do we find a cure for this, or vaccine and medication? So there will be always investment in research. There will be a little bit of a dent, but it will come back. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Nanda, for the question. Yeah, I mean, as Prof. Saman mentioned, of course, the COVID-19 has affected all, so including the education institute, the research institute. So funding will be, I believe, will be more competitive, right? More challenging. But again, if you sort of think carefully and creatively, there are always sort of funding for sort of applied research, translation research. For instance, now Now, COVID has shown us like it's important to bring your basic science to the translation, so bench to base as quickly as possible, right? So if you have the applied research proposal, even you go to the government and say, if my proposal, my research can solve a daily life problem or whatever very important problem, there's no brainer, just we need to fund this one, because the benefit we get as a society, Sri Lankan societies, even Sri Lankan government will be very happy if you can solve the problem for them. I think one of the difference in Singapore is like Singapore government understand that, and even the researchers, they understand them. They need just not the paper. Papers are important, publications are important, but you need to solve the real life problem. So if you solve the problem, if you have the solution, a reasonable solution, it may take years, but if you have the trajectory to solve the problem, you will always have the money. So for instance, now Singapore, I think even with a lot of billions of spending due to this COVID crisis, the Singapore government has not sort of slashed the funding for research because they understand the value of research. But the good thing is, on the other hand, the benefit they got from research is huge. For instance, our COVID thing, we sell for many countries, right? So if the vaccine comes, the single vaccine can earn probably $1 billion. So it's a great investment tool. So Sri Lankan scientists, I think we should not, of course, put all the blame onto the government or the funding agencies. We should be creative enough to collaborate with the international agencies, international experts, and find the niche, find the area that government or the funding agencies cannot say no. So for that you need to have a workshop, grant writing workshops, introduction of the international expo for young scientists, so on and so forth. So there are a lot to be done, but I think it's the time. I hope you will make use of this opportunity.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Another two short questions from Professor Janaka Ekanayake. First, what are the opportunities for Sri Lankan scientists to do new research in, I think, 2020? We got that question from email. So you have answer, short answer? Please unmute your mic.
Nanda, sorry, I didn't get the last part of the question, sorry.
The opportunities for Sri Lankan researchers to initiate a new project under new normal. New normal means under COVID conditions. I think you have done, your department, they have done a lot of inventions. So they want to know what are the new opportunities actually.
I mean, the first time in our, we have been doing research for last so many years, but first time we started working with our medical faculty, mainly on COVID related research, because, we in our department, we have good researchers working on artificial intelligence, but never bother to look at the applications. I have seen that Professor Jaya had a application in dentistry, but never in Peradeniya. But we applied for a grant. This is the medical faculty and the engineering faculty together on an AI-related COVID project. Our project is now shortlisted among so many, so only 7 projects were shortlisted in the world. It's a Canadian fund. So there are so many new opportunities, as everybody was telling, even though the COVID has had a dip in certain aspect, that has also created many opportunities. So, and it also kind of created, like, Peradeniya being one of the fully fledged multidisciplinary university, we don't talk to each other. We are in our own, the cells and just trying to do. So I think it is in the next, like new normal, we need to think about more multidisciplinary research where we can work together. And I think, as everybody is telling, like this Zoom, most of us didn't know before COVID. Now the Zoom has created us an opportunity to talk to each other, wherever they are. So I think these are important, the openings for us to continue more and more research.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Prof. Janaka. The final one goes to Professor Steve. Steve, actually, you are mentioning about the importance of patient doing a research, collaborative research, because we have to overcome so many barriers. Actually, we received a couple of emails from our colleagues mentioning that the recent government regulation restricting us to sign MOU between universities, especially with the international universities and institutions. I think you had faced same problem. When I was in the director, I think we worked together to overcome so many difficulties. So I think for young researchers, can you advise the importance of patience and work collaboratively, because we have to overcome so many barriers from other side also to develop a good collaborative research and finally get a good result. So can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, thank you. You know, it's interesting, our earlier speaker had mentioned that, you know, we're all in our separate silos. Sometimes it's easier for me to collaborate with medical people in Peradeniya than I can in the Department of Medicine at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. So all of this requires that personal relationship and the meeting of the minds. And also to recognize that research, no matter how, whether we're talking about laboratory research, basic research, translational research, something goes wrong somewhere along the way. Somehow deadlines are missed, interruptions happen, COVID happens, crises happens, lockdowns happen, cyclones and hurricanes happen. So the one area of patience is the fact that it's not going to go as smoothly as it's described in the grant. Secondly, a key aspect is to not necessarily be seeking the big money that produces a multi-year, multi-institutional, multidisciplinary project. It starts with a small seedling, like planting in the paddy. You don't start with a full-blown field of rice. You start off with individual plants that need to be nurtured. And I think that's the key. And if there's a possibility of getting a Fulbright or a small seed grant, right now, strangely enough, where a lot of the COVID funding around our university is somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000. Now that's nothing, but yet it brings together the opportunity to do surveys and pay incentives to the respondents, to create workshops so that we can share particular perspectives. Yes, eventually they'll end up with the large grants for NIH that can be applied for, including one that we're applying for in December. But the key steps is to bring people together and to share ideas. And now we're doing that primarily in Zoom. It has its problems in terms of communication. I'm sure if we were being served tea now, we would be able to have little chats between individuals that may be quite productive. And we're missing out on that because you can send the tea across and sweets across the internet. But so patience involves small steps and understanding complications. And if it's worth doing, then it's worth dealing with those complications and challenges.
Okay, thank you, Steve, for that wonderful explanation. And actually today we had a very fruitful discussion and thought-provoking presentations. And also, I think we had a very good Q&A session. I would like to thank our 4 distinguished speakers joining us this different part of the world to empower us and give kind of good knowledge about COVID-19 situation, and after that what we can do. And actually on behalf of NSF and International Relations Office of University of Peradeniya, I would like to thank you all. Before wind up the session, I think this is a great opportunity for us, as Professor Jaya mentioned. With the crisis, we can rise. If we can rise during the crisis, then we can withstand to anything. So we are here to emphasize that to our audience and participants. And before I wind up the session, I want to highlight the proverb, African proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with the team. So we are here to go with the team, and thank you very much. And I wind up this session and hand over this session to Roshan. Thank you very much.
Right. So thank you, sir. It was a very nice Q&A session. Unfortunately, due to time restraints, we had to cut it down short. But still, I would again like to thank all our resource persons for today. Give the name very quickly. So Professor Ranjith Senaratne from the National Science Foundation. A very big thank you to Ms. Till and Ms. Testanta from the National Science Foundation. Then I would like to thank all our resource persons for today for dedicating their time, the valuable time and space, for sharing their expertise with us. Professor Saman Halgamuge from the University of Melbourne, Australia. Thank you a lot, sir. Professor Janaka Ekanayake from the University of Peradeniya, Faculty of Engineering. Professor Jaya Seneviratne from National Dental Research Institute, Singapore. Duke NUS Medical School. Thank you a lot, sir, for joining in. And Professor Stephen Schensul from University of Connecticut. Thank you a lot for joining, sir. And then Dr. Nanda Gunawardana for moderating the Q&A session. So I think this was a very fruitful session for all the attendees. And thank you everyone for joining in this occasion. So we have reached the end of today's program. And have a pleasant evening, all of you, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you all.